Hello and welcome everyone, a new episode of Money Means Business. In tonight's episode we are going to tackle together the latest developments in the Egyptian-EU ties. The Egyptian-European ties are very strong and it reached the strategic partnership last year. And President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is keen when he visits any of the European countries or receive one of its top officials to indicate that Egypt is eager to continue with this strategic partnership in all domains. And it's going to be a win-win situation as it started before. We are going to take some examples. On top of the list is the Egyptian-Danish relationships, particularly after this historic visit of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to Denmark, where he was received by the King and Queen of Denmark, and he met also with the Prime Minister of the country. And to continue with what was built during this visit, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi only a few days ago received a phone call and exchanged talks with Mette Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, where they discussed a number of issues of mutual concern, and also they discussed the strategic partnership that is binding Egypt and the EU, and particularly with Denmark, as they agreed to continue with this cooperation in various domains. And today we are going to continue focusing on the economic field, whether it's investment, it's trade, it's the renewable energy, green transformation, green economy, you name it, as we are trying all the time to be on top of the list when it comes to the countries which are eager to transform its economy into green economy, because simply this is the future. Renewable energy, green hydrogen, this is the future. Moving to shipping industry, for example, all these elements were discussed during the summit talks of the President with many of his European counterparts and also European heads of government. We are going to focus on these issues and on these important topics in our episode with our dear guest live in the studio. But before going to that, we are going to live with the most important Egyptian-European economic relations and the achievements of them on the ground in the detailed comprehensive report, and then we are going to return back with more.
Relations between Egypt and Denmark are characterized by historical, multi-dimensional cooperation. Despite the geographical distance between them, Egypt-Danish relations have witnessed remarkable development in recent decades, reflecting mutual understanding and keenness to enhance bilateral cooperation between the two countries. Cooperation between Egypt and Denmark began in the early 20th century, but has recently witnessed a strong start in the fields of sustainable development, support for infrastructure projects, in addition to cooperation in environmental and cultural fields, in addition to the agreement between the two countries on regional and international issues. The economic boost was crystallized through the volume of Egyptian exports to Denmark, which amounted to $63 million during the first 10 months of 2024, compared to $45 million during the same period last year. The Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics reported that the volume of Egyptian imports from Denmark amounted to $229 million during the first 10 months of 2024, compared to $195 million during the same period in 2023. While the value of trade exchange between Egypt and Denmark amounted to $292 million during the first 10 months of 2024, compared to $240 million during the same period in 2023. On the political level, relations between the two countries began to consolidate in 2008, when the Danish Foreign Minister visited Egypt and met with then President Mohammed Hosni Mubarak, where various aspects of bilateral relations were discussed, especially the situation in the Middle East region, developments in the Palestinian issue, and the peace process in the region. In October 2010, then Foreign Minister Ahmed Abulghait met with his Danish counterpart Lene Espersen, where the meeting discussed the situation in the Middle East and the efforts made to resolve the Palestinian issue. On September 27, 2020, Sameh Shoukry, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, met with his Danish counterpart, Jeppe Kofod, where the two sides discussed all aspects of bilateral relations between the two countries, in addition to discussing the latest developments in the regional and international situations that concern both countries. On March 13, 2023, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received Mette Frederiksen, Prime Minister of Denmark, on the first official visit by a Danish Prime Minister to Egypt. On Tuesday, February 11, 2025, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received a phone call from Mette Frederiksen, Prime Minister of Denmark. The call emphasized the importance of implementing the outcomes of the state visit that the President recently conducted to Denmark. In addition to all axes of the strategic partnership between the two countries, especially in the economic and investment fields, and clean and renewable energy, especially with Egypt's keenness to become a center for the production and export of green hydrogen, based on the promising capabilities it possesses in this field. For her part, the Danish Prime Minister praised the momentum witnessed by bilateral relations between the two countries, stressing her country's keenness to strengthen coordination with Egypt, whether at the bilateral level or within the framework of international forums, regarding regional and international issues of common interest, especially with the start of Denmark's non-permanent membership in the Security Council as of January 2025, and its presidency of the European Union during the second half of 2025. It is worth noting that the two countries are keen to exchange views and coordinate positions on international issues of common interest, in addition to exchanging visits between senior officials with the aim of activating bilateral relations.
Welcome back. As we mentioned in our intro, that this episode is going to be focusing on the Egyptian-EU relations, and we are going to take some examples which took place recently, particularly when President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received a phone call from the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, as they discussed, in addition to bilateral ties and the political issues, particularly when it comes to Gaza. And in fact, the Danish Prime Minister hailed the Egyptian efforts exerted to pacify the situation and to continue with trying to put an end to the regional escalation resulting from the Israeli genocide war in Gaza, which lasted for more than 15 months and ended with the martyrdom of more than 48,000 Palestinians, mostly women, children and minors. But they also addressed the bilateral ties, and both sides affirmed the importance of implementing the outcomes of President el-Sisi's recent state visit to Denmark in December, as they highlighted the various aspects of the Egyptian-Danish strategic partnership, particularly in terms of economy, investment, clean and renewable energy, maritime industry. Additionally, the call outlined Egypt's efforts to become a hub for producing and exporting green hydrogen, given its promising potential in this domain. For a part, the Danish Prime Minister affirmed Copenhagen's interest in further enhancing coordination with Cairo on regional and international issues of mutual concern, both bilaterally and within the framework of international forums. They highlighted the Denmark's commitment and commencement of non-permanent membership in the United Nations Security Council in January 2025 and the upcoming presidency of the European Union, which is going to start by the second half of 2025. Here we are watching together the memoranda of understanding which were signed by both President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, as last December it was such a historic visit to Denmark, marking the initial stop on a three-leg European tour, which took the president to Norway and Ireland. The president was received in Denmark and was hosted by the King of Denmark, Frederick X, and Queen Marie, the Queen of Denmark. They made dinner banquet for the president, and the president during the banquet really expressed his pride to be among those elite today, and the spirit of friendship and cooperation that unites Egypt and Copenhagen. Well, right after the short break, we are going to turn back with more, so stay tuned.
في السباق للعالمية الكل بيجري عشان يوصل للهدف، للمستقبل، وعشان توصل وتنجح ويسمع العالم صوتك ويشاور عليك ويبقى اسمك رقم واحد وسط أكبر الأسماء في العالم، كان لازم نجري، نشتغل، نفكر ازاي نبدع، ازاي نتميز، وهدفنا واضح قدام عينينا، اننا في السباق مش بس نوصل لكن نسبق بخطوة. 4000 مهندس وعامل وفني من خيرة البنائين المصريين واللي أنشأوا محور تحيا مصر في مرحلته الأولى والثانية لربط الطريق الدائري بالطريق الدائري الإقليمي، بدأوا العمل في المرحلة الثانية بإنشاء كوبري ملجم، وكان هدفهم من أول يوم مش إنشاء مجرد كوبري لكن واحد من المعالم المصرية يوصلوا بيه للعالمية. وعشان يحققوا هدفهم اجتهدوا، أبدعوا، وفكروا ازاي يتميزوا في كل تفاصيله، والنهارده نجحوا بمجهودهم والتزامهم وإرادتهم انهم يحققوا المستحيل ويقدموا أعرض كوبري ملجم في العالم ويدخلوا بيه للعالمية ويتسجل إبداعهم في موسوعة جينيس للأرقام القياسية. يمتد جسم الكوبري الرئيسي بطول 5.6 كيلومترات، بالإضافة ل 10 كيلومترات تشكل إجمالي أطوال 18 من المطالع والمنازل. يتميز ب6 حارات مرورية في كل اتجاه بطول 540 متر وعرض 67.3 متر، ويحتوي على أكبر فتحة ملاحية على النيل بعرض 300 متر. استخدم في إنشائه ما يزيد عن 1,000,000 متر مكعب من الخرسانة وأكثر من 290 ألف طن من الحديد، وبعد تجريبه طبقا للمواصفات العالمية تأكدت قدرته على تحمل أوزان تصل إلى 120 طن. كوبري تحيا مصر الملجم مش بس إنجاز عالمي لكنه بيتميز بجماله وتفاصيله والإبداع اللي فيه، وده لأنه فيه أول ممشى زجاجي في الشرق الأوسط على جانبي الكوبري الملجم وفوق أجمل أنهار العالم نهر النيل. طول ما عينينا على العالمية هنفضل نجري، هدفنا نوصل ببلدنا لمكانتها الأولى وسط العالم. هنا كوبري تحيا مصر الملجم، بداية الطريق للعالمية.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and let me first welcome my dear guest live here in the studio, Dr. Mohammed Roujdi, our banking and economic expert. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Thank you.
We promised our viewers that we are going today to focus on the Egyptian-EU partnership, strategic partnership and relations. And here we are going to continue with some examples. The first example we do have with us is Egypt-Denmark relations. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has a historic visit to Denmark where he was received by the King and Queen of Denmark, and he had very fruitful consultations and talks with Mette Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, and they continued with more cooperation, whether by the visit of Frederiksen here to Egypt or with a phone call which took place just a few days ago where they continued to build on what was achieved before. We spoke about renewable energy, green hydrogen, turning Egypt into a Middle East hub for renewable energy, maritime industry, you name it. Before going into details, let me know your vision regarding this partnership between Egypt and EU and Denmark as a role model.
First of all, I would like to highlight on one of the most important things, which is that Egypt is returning back to play its historical role. I believe that this is one of the most crucial things. As far as I recall, this is the first visit to Egyptian president since starting the diplomatic relationship between us and Denmark, as far as I recall, 1922, as far as I recall, and this is highlighting that Egypt is returning back to play its historical role, not only on the Middle East but globally, and this is one of the most important things in my humble opinion. In terms of, especially we have the trade volume, as far as I recall, last year reached to almost $300 million, almost, and this is one of the most important things. And to turn back to your point concerning the EU relationship between Egypt and EU, as you know, and our audience, there's what we are calling it a mutual benefit, especially for the EU to invest in the relationship with, in general, Africa, because if we are taking in our consideration one of the most important things, if we do a comparison between Africa and Europe, in general, we can see that the pyramid of ages, which is here in Africa, they are calling it youth country.
Yeah,
because
youth continent.
Yes, youth continent, thank you. That the majority of the people or the population, they are 60 to 70%, they are youth. In terms of the European countries, you can see that the pyramid is inverted, totally inverted, that 60 to 70% is elder people. Accordingly, they have, when they are, for the industrial part, the commodities and everything, they need a market to sell their products and everything. Accordingly, there should be a good relationship between the European countries and the African countries. And to return back to our point, especially for Egypt, Egypt is returning back to play its historical role in Africa and Middle East and Europe, and this is what we are calling it the gate for the African countries. Egypt, especially, we have a lot of things starting from our geographic location, thank you, and our leadership in Africa and the Middle East. Accordingly, this is the right decision to work with African continent in general, to start with Egypt. And returning back to our point in terms of the diplomatic relationship, that we are turning to play it in a good way, honestly, and this is the presidential leadership is focusing on that, honestly, and all sectors in Egypt is working to return back to play our historical role, to have what we are calling it real economic development, especially in terms of GDP structure. As you know, and our audience, our GDP structure consists of three main parts: the agriculture part, and the industrial part, and the service part. And what we are calling it the highest added value nowadays, which is the service part, which has the highest added value. Or if any country would like to have a quick win, they should focus on the service part, and accordingly...
And it's not going to be implemented on the ground except via digital transformation.
Thank you.
Because without that, we are not going to be able to introduce the best service for our citizens. And I think this is embodied in so many sectors, last but not least in the important conference which took place recently, as Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Al-Madbouli addressed the health insurance system here in Egypt, and he mentioned this on the ground as only an example, but to be implemented in all other aspects. And this is another episode, if you permit me. Here, sir, I want to focus on the Egyptian will to cooperate with all European countries, but each in its speciality, if I may call it this way, expertise. For example, when it comes to Denmark, let's speak about renewable energy, green hydrogen, and maritime industry. When it comes to Romania, we're going to talk about agriculture and wheat, or grains to be accurate. When it comes to and we are going to continue with that with each country, if I can name this. How do you see this as an example of cooperation between the north and south of the Mediterranean? Because I do remember, I think it was the G7 conference, Giorgia Meloni of Italy said that they learned the lesson. Because without this cooperation between both sides of the Mediterranean, we are all losers. If you want to elaborate on that.
Actually, what you are saying, it sounds like a music to my ears when you are separating things and you are focusing on the second part that I would like to emphasize on it, which is renewable energy. Because as you know, and our audience, Denmark has what we are calling it a competitive edge in terms of renewable energy, and they did a lot of initiatives. And Egypt is focusing at the same time on this part. And one of the most important things, this is not Egypt or Denmark focus, it's the global world is focusing on renewable energy. As you know, and our audience, majority of our, actually of the resources is limited. Accordingly, when oil will one day will run out, and whatever electricity and everything, what we have to depend on actually what we are calling it renewable energy, solar energy, hydroelectric, whatever from the sources of energy. And nowadays, to be honest with you and our audience, we are not inventing the wheel.
Yeah.
What we are taking it nowadays, what we are calling it the best practice. If you highlighted, actually I would like to say it, you hit a nerve in terms of you highlighted that every country has its own competitive edge.
Yep.
Accordingly, to get the best practice from Denmark, whatever from any country, Greece, whatever, any country, we are collaborating it to do what we are hoping it, the economic reform, and to have great GDP growth. This is one of the most important things. Considering it our great strategy, SDG 2030 strategy, to cope with what we are calling it working on renewable energy. And you can see, or in another term, the sustainability part.
The word sustainable development and achieving the sustainable development goals, I think this is the umbrella where we can include anything under this umbrella. But here I'd like also to continue with the levels of cooperation. I mean, here we were speaking about President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi when he was in this European tour, which took him just less than 2 months ago to Denmark, Norway and Ireland, and Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdel Ati was in Munich. Now he is in Addis Ababa. In fact, he is having such intense diplomatic activities. But when he was in Munich for the Munich Security Summit, he held on the sidelines of this summit a number of meetings with his counterparts and with many of the top executives. And here I should mention his meeting with his Danish counterpart. He also continued with what was agreed upon. And he also said that Cairo and Copenhagen can achieve miracles when it comes to cooperation in these domains. This means that it's not only the summit talks of the president, no, it's on the ministerial level and it's on the joint committees level. How do you see this? I mean, it's not only a memo of understanding, it's not ink on paper, it's things implemented on the ground.
I would like to thank you for highlighting one of the most important things. Actually, for the second time in this episode, you hit a nerve, actually. When we are talking about MOU, Memo of Understanding, actually it's not just like that. Nowadays, what you are highlighting, it's reflecting actually on what we are calling it the harmony between all sectors in our countries. You can see on the presidential level, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is doing a great initiatives and focusing on returning back to play our historical role, and this is one of the most important things. Can you imagine that this almost over 100 years that this is the first president, he is the first Egyptian president that visit Denmark. You can see and you can imagine how this is important to return back to play our historical role, and at the same time the harmony. Dr. Abdel Fattah,
Dr. Badr Abdelati.
Dr. Badr
Yeah.
Abdelati,
Yeah.
sorry, Dr. Badr Abdelati is doing the same thing, which is he is capitalizing. I would like to say it, capitalizing on what President Abdel Fattah Sisi is working, or his strategy on returning back to play our historical role, and he is seeing this one of the most important things, in my humble opinion, to do what we are calling it strategic alliances with other countries.
I like the term, because this is when implemented on the ground, the strategic alliances, meaning that the win-win situation is going to be all the time there, and here the fruitful results are going to have their positive impact on both peoples.
Yes,
True?
I do agree with you. This is what we are calling it, let me quote you, win-win situation. We have a mutual benefit. We have a competitive edge in terms of a lot of products, and they have a competitive edge concerning a lot of products and technologies. We are making what we are calling it to change commodities and experience. And I highlighted previously that the volume of trading between Denmark and Egypt, it reached, as far as I recall, last year almost $300 million. According, this is not, this is a good number to kind of start and capitalizing on it.
As a start. Good
As a
number,
good
as
start.
a start. Yeah.
And we have a great initiative in Egypt, as you know, and this is that presidential leadership is adopting it, that to reach 100 billion, as far as I recall, $100 billion exporting commodities, and we have to open new markets for us. And EU is one of the most important things, not just to get our needs from them. We have to work on exporting things to them and to have a new market.
And technology transfer and the job market, because simply if they want to have here an industrial zone, for example, they are going to have all the potentials, and all the potential starting with the workers, our labor force. This is also,
manpower.
I think, manpower. This is another source of attraction, in my humble opinion. And with Lars Løkke, the Danish top diplomat, he said it this way. And they also discussed with Dr. Badr Abdelati, of course, our top diplomat, what should take place on the ground after Denmark assumed the presidency of the European Union in July. I mean, in just 4 months to come. This is another side of the coin. Huh?
I believe this is one of the most important things. You highlighted the manpower or the labor, and this is, it's not just, we are saying this in our episode, the manpower or the qualified manpower or labor, this is one of the most important index on what we are calling it competitiveness report. To elaborate to our audience, what is the competitiveness report? The competitiveness report, if I'm an investor, assume that I'm an investor and I would like to invest in any country, what shall I do? I have to read the competitiveness report. There's a lot of parameters in this report, or a lot of indexes or indicators on this report. One of them, the manpower, the roads, the electricity, a lot of things. And nowadays you can see that Egypt is jumping a lot of ranks on the competitiveness report, which is a positive signal to bring FDI. And this is proved by one of the most important credit risk agencies, S&P, and a lot of things that Egypt, Standard & Poor's, and a lot of things that our credit risk rating is enhancing. How this is reflected based on enhancing our economy, the strategic initiatives for economic reform, and the returning back to play our historical role.
Showing resilience. Even amid all the challenges which are taking place nowadays. I'm not going to go into politics, but unfortunately politics and economy can never be separated. But sir, what
There are
you
two faces for one
coin.
Yeah.
What you have just said was echoed precisely in another important meeting by Dr. Badr Abdelati with, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, with Valdis Dombrovski. Valdis Dombrovski is the European Commissioner for Economy and Production, and this was also on the sidelines of the Munich Security Summit. They spoke about the Egyptian economic potentials, the importance of economic and trade cooperation between Egypt and the European Union, and also the potentials and incentives given by Egypt to the economic zone of the new Suez Canal, particularly to the European investors, and to benefit from the free trade agreements Egypt is a member in. Simply, he was echoing what you have just said. But I'd like you, sir, to comment on that, and particularly to focus on all the efforts exerted by the state to eliminate all obstacles in front of the European investors.
Actually, I would like to start to highlight on this by one of quotes for one of the famous strategic planning science called Henry Mintzberg. He said that it is easy to plan, but it is difficult to implement. It's a challenge in terms of implementation. And nowadays, for the first time, you can see the synergy between all sectors of the government under support and supervision of the presidential leadership, especially for the trading and economic part. And you highlighted one of the most crucial things, free zones or the trading zones, actually. And you can see that Gafi, or Minister of Investments, actually they did a lot of incentives for the investors with cooperation with Minister of Finance. You can see the synergy and what we are calling it the harmony, and this is aligned with Dr. Badr Abdelati highlighted our diplomatic had actually.
In fact, he is a master of economic diplomacy.
Yes.
I think he is really keen to implement this term on the ground wherever he is. I mean, wherever he is participating in any important summit, you are going to find him, in addition, of course, to Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli in Addis Ababa, for example, participating in behalf of the President in the EU summit. You are going to find also the sideline meetings. Sometimes they are even more important than participating in the main event, in my humble opinion, of course.
I believe it we kill at this point, as we agreed on one term, metaphorically, that politics and the economy, they are two faces for one coin. Actually, this is one of the most important things. To turn back to this point specifically, in terms of the incentives and the harmony between all sectors to provide a good investment opportunity to bring FDIs, especially we are doing a lot of agreement, or I would like to call it strategic partnerships or alliances with a lot of countries. One of the most important things that a lot of incentives, that tax waivers, in addition to what we are calling it the golden license to establish companies, and the government is will guarantee that any company or any investor would like to get back his profit to the mother company, he is totally free to do this. And this is one of the most important things, and this is aligned with our political stability, and this is one of the most crucial things, despite the fact that all countries beside us, there's a lot of actually a lot of disturbance. I would like to say
chaos.
I
said it.
Thank you.
Continue with that, sir, please.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of things. Despite those facts, our presidential leadership is focusing to have what we are calling it political stability, and this is positively reflected on our economic reform and helped us to grow and bring more FDI. In addition to that, this is, in my humble opinion, one of the most smart ways to develop the economy is to give the international or multinational companies that they would like to invest in Egypt, despite the tax incentives, they are giving them this conditional if you get, like, as far as I recall, 60% of
60
your
to 70 to 65.
67.
You mean localizing industry, the local components?
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
You will benefit from it. Accordingly, this will help, in another term, what we are calling it SMEs, small and medium enterprises. And small and medium enterprises, in my humble opinion, are the main pillars to build any country. Why? To simplify things to our audience. Simply, if we are assuming metaphorically that our country has two large companies, for example, if one of them defaulted, what will happen? We will lose like 50% of our economy.
Yeah.
But if we will have many companies, if one will default, nothing will happen. This will be organic things. Other one will come back and will work. Accordingly, diversifying our economy, in other term, will help us to have what we are calling it a stronger economy. In other term, what we are calling it, don't put all your
The
eggs
eggs in
one basket. Or in an investment term,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
for that ABC investment, you have to diversify your portfolio.
Here, sir, you are mentioning startups, new entrepreneurs, the private sector, SMEs. Again, you are echoing another meeting of Dr. Badr Abdelati in Munich on the sidelines of the security conference. Well, Dr. Badr Abdelati met, and all these meetings, by the way, took place yesterday with Ekaterina Zahareva, the European Commissioner for New Startups, for Innovation and Scientific Research, meaning that Egypt is also keen to continue with that and to continue with cooperation with some European institutions or entities regarding innovation, regarding research, to have our, let's say, strategies based on scientific rules, not haphazardly, not just taking place like that, not to guarantee its sustainability. No, the case is totally different. And in my humble opinion, this meeting was very important, as Egypt is ready now to be included in one of the most important initiatives like Horizon Europe, or European Horizon. How do you see this, sir?
Honestly, when you are talking about research and innovations, or in another term R&D, this is, in my humble opinion, one of the most important things. But before I highlight or elaborate more about it, I recalled, it comes to top of my mind, one of the famous quotes for Heraclitus. He said that we are on the world, that the only constant on this world is what? The only constant in this world is the change. Actually, accordingly, to cope with what is happening nowadays, actually, which is the change, and this is actually dynamic world, R&D will be our tool, or research and innovation will be our tool to cope with everything nowadays. But in another term, we can say it, we have to build things on a scientific approach, not just we have a we find just we are talking together and we just like they are calling it the Aruka moment to find something we have to implement. No, it should take appropriate study, and it should be seeking the tools to implement this and this strategy in a proper way, with effectiveness and efficiency. And nowadays you can see that Egypt is working on increasing the budget of R&D, the education, and investing on this part to have solid thing to build strategy, to build what we are calling it a fixed strategy in terms of the industrial part, the service part, and the agriculture part. I'm not talking about the agriculture part, despite the fact we have a lot of mega projects.
Sure.
And in my humble opinion, to work on the economic development, the keeping our political stability, The agricultural part is national security. In my
Food security is national security.
Thank you.
Amen to that. But sir, all what you have just said is very important, but with another term to be included into this harmonious speech you had. The strategic partnership between the public and private sector, because what you have just said cannot be implemented on the ground without this partnership. How do you see the role of the private sector, and what are even your dreams regarding the participation of the private sector in developing our economy? You have 2 minutes.
This is actually, you hit a nerve concerning this part for
Third
thank you. I was highlighting that because when the synergy will be between the private and public sector, this will positively reflect on our GDP growth. And nowadays, for the first time in Egypt, you can see there's what we are calling it conferences between the public sector and all ministers, different ministers, and the businessmen on all different sectors, actually, construction sector, banking sector, in all sector, industrial sectors. You can see this loudly and to the public, and the synergy between them positively will reflect on our strategic objective to have a great economic reform. And this is, by the way, all the globe is seeing that positively. And accordingly, one of the most important indicators that the credit risk for Egypt is enhanced. And you can see easily that Egypt is nowadays a member of the BRICS. You can see this is one of the positive signal message to the globe, that the harmony between all sectors in Egypt to achieve what we are calling a 2030 vision. This is highlighted by this is synergy, and it was crystal clear to all, not the Egyptian citizen, to the globe. For that reason, they invited us to join the BRICS. They invited us to be one of the most members on one of the most, on all important conferences globally, in addition to
G20.
G20, thank you.
The president was invited to the G20 more than once in the last few years, I mean, for the last editions of the summit.
And we hosted, by the way, COP27.
Amen
this
to
is
that.
a positive
This is
signal that
issue.
we are on the same...
And here also I can mention CSR, because corporate social responsibility. I think this is another issue which is going to be another topic or another episode. If you permit me, I'm going to leave you with a promise to discuss the role of corporate social responsibility in one of our episodes. Promise?
It's a pleasure. I do enjoy the conversation or our meeting on such topics. Thank you
very
so
much, sir. We were very much delighted and honored to have with us live here in the studio my dear guest, Dr. Mohammed Roji, our economic and banking expert. But I'm going now to leave you with the most important economic events which took place in the past 7 days. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks, sir, and many thanks to all my dear viewers for watching this live.
Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli confirmed that there is planning and studies underway to develop a comprehensive vision for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip in full coordination with the Palestinian side, explaining that the reconstruction process is not a new matter but has been carried out in many countries throughout history, including Germany and Japan after World War II, as reconstruction and development operations took place in their original locations without displacing the population. The Cabinet approved the procedures and steps proposed by the Ministries of Finance, Investment and Foreign Trade, which aim to provide more customs facilitations and facilities related to the procedures for the release of imported goods, develop the customs system and enhance export and import control procedures. Mr. Ahmed Kojak, Minister of Finance, and Engineer Hassan Al-Khatib, Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade, confirmed that the first package of customs facilities aims to facilitate procedures, reduce release time and costs, facilitate the pre-clearance system, and postpone the collection of customs duties and other taxes and fees until the goods arrive. Mohammed Farouk, member of the Federation of Tourism Chambers and the Tourism and Aviation Division of the Cairo Chamber of Commerce, said that Egypt awaits a promising tourism year currently in light of what the state is preparing to open from tourism projects and redevelop and rehabilitate heritage tourism areas such as the downtown area in the heart of Cairo, the Grand Egyptian Museum, the Great Transfiguration Project in St. Catherine City, and many other projects throughout Egypt. In addition to the announcement of the game God of War, that its events will be in ancient Egypt, it will make millions of people more interested in visiting Egypt. This is in addition to the episode of Mr. Beast about the pyramids, which achieved 55 million views in 2 days, confirming that there is a global passion to visit Egypt. A government official revealed that the government is close to concluding negotiations with the European Union and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, to obtain funding of up to 200 million euros to launch a new power line in the Jabal al-Zayt area on the Red Sea coast, explaining that the funding is divided into a loan on soft terms worth 165 million euros in addition to 35 million euros as a grant from the European Union for the benefit of the Egyptian Electricity Transmission Company, which is a government company. Mr. Walid Gamal-Eddin, chairman of the General Authority for the Suez Canal Economic Zone, witnessed the signing ceremony for 2 new projects in the Sukhna Industrial Zone for manufacturing and printing textiles, with a total investment exceeding $3 million and providing approximately 80 job opportunities. The factory will produce prayer rugs and woven fabrics with a targeted export volume for 2025 of $6 million. Lieutenant General Engineer Kamil El-Wazir, Deputy Prime Minister for Industrial Development, Minister of Industry and Transport, held a meeting with representatives of 9 Turkish companies operating in the fields of spinning, weaving, ready-made garments, packaging, and home appliances to discuss supporting current investments and their future plans to expand in the Egyptian market, stressing the removal of any obstacles facing them to increase their investments in the Egyptian market and enhance Turkish exports from Egypt to various international markets. Egypt's PMI reached its highest level in the last 15 months in January 2025, recording 50.7%, as the index increased from 48.1 points in December to 50 points in January, which is the dividing line between growth and contraction. The index thus reached its highest levels since November 2020, rising above the 50 level only twice during this period, the first of which was in August 2024. The Central Bank of Egypt sold treasury bills of various maturities worth 63.668 billion Egyptian pound, and the data showed that the accepted offers were less than the amount required in the offering, which was set at 145 billion Egyptian pound for all maturities. The maximum required return was 32% for a 1-year period, but the acceptable return in the offering did not exceed its maximum limit of 27.75%.